Good evening, everyone. Welcome all of you to the third day of the event. So, to start with, we have Mr. Partha Sarathi, and his session will continue uh, um, from now. And he has two sessions to take. Mr. Partha Sarathi, and his session will continue uh, uh, from now. And he has two sessions to take. Mr. Partha Sarathi. Sir, I think there is an echo. I think if your YouTube is
Yeah,
switched on,
sound
please. And he has, yeah. Sorry for the interruption. So I just request Venkat sir to briefly introduce about today's session and Partha Sarathi for a while. Over to Venkat sir.
Hi, good morning, everybody. We have, as per schedule, today is the third day. We are delivering SCM webinar series, and we are going to cover the supply chain management side as well as Oracle ERP side also. And I want to introduce Partha. He is working as a lead consultant in Oracle cloud industry. He is serving the industry from supply chain management until Oracle Cloud since last 15 years. He is helping a lot of people to learn Oracle Cloud fundamentals and going strong in supply chain management. And you can reach out to him or our team for any future things. So let us move into the procurement fundamentals and ERP systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Venkat sir. We leave the session to Parthaji to continue. Over to Mr. Partha Sarathi.
Yeah. Hi everyone. A warm welcome. On the day 3 of this 5-day webinar series. Today we are in day 3. Today is the first session. We had a wonderful session yesterday with GVRK sir and Chakriji about both cloud and the theoretical part. Today we are going to start the procure to pay cycle. I'm going to have both the session, both the theory part of it as well as the practical ERP side of it. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to put myself out of the camera, and let me know once you can able to see my screen. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, very much. Please maximize the screen. F5.
Sure.
You can zoom.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, slideshow. Yes. That's Thank you very much.
So thanks, Pamoji. I'll take on from here. Welcome everyone. We are doing this 5-day webinar series, and today is day 3. As I mentioned, I'm going to initially take the plan to procure to pay cycle. How does it work theoretically? What are the fundamentals basically with procure to pay? Who are all the key players in the procure to pay cycle? And whatever I discussed, then later I move on to the ERP system in the second. In the second session, I'll be doing a couple of demo cycle for us to connect the dots between the first session and the second session. Moving ahead, like as mentioned, the agenda is always important for any kind of discussion. I have put the discussions whatever we are going to have, as mentioned, if you are going to discuss about something procurement, we should be touch base from the beginning, what is a procurement, and what is a plan to procure to payment cycle. When we talk about procure to pay, it's inevitable to leave the supplier, because supplier is the revolving the center axis for the procure to pay. And how do we do the supplier qualification and evaluation, and what is a purchase requisition, and what is a purchase order, and what the payment cycle of it. And we do have question and answers, but I would like to have the question at the end of the session after we complete the practical part of it, so that you'll get more idea, and you might even get more questions, so you can keep your questions for the very end. And what is procurement? So procurement is a common term in the supply chain world. It's not just to ERP. Procurement is something like there are always demand. There is always supply. So wherever there is a demand, there is a supply will be meeting. And procurement is something like which help an organization or anything to get the required material, be it any manufacturing industry or be it a service industry or be it any place. Like procurement helps us to manage the entire end-to-end procurement process. How do we source the material, like who is the right person, and what is the best price we can get, and how soon we can get the material. We will have everything covered in the procurement part of it, and this procurement is a single stop solution to get the material or to get the supply reach our organization. So we can control all direct and indirect procurement, and we can also control the service spend, and with a lesser cost and complexity that runs the standalone system. So it's not just about the software. Like the procurement, it strengthens source to contract process through enhanced strategic planning, risk management, supplier evaluation, and contract development. As I mentioned, the importance of supplier, it's really important to have the supplier, the right supplier for your right organization has to be chosen and has to be like awarded, so that we can have a seamless procure to pay cycle can happen. Like supplier is one of the essential key player, and procurement like execute against all procure to pay process to reduce maverick spend and increase volume with preferred supplier. So again, when we choose the right supplier, it's going to be all easy, and it's about just dealing with the supplier and getting the material and running your business. So it's going to be as simple as that. And obviously it's going to cut cost and risk by forging closer and having more collaboration with the supplier and the subcontractor relationship. The more we strong the relationship with the supplier, and the more benefit mutually we are going to get. Like the organization is going to get the benefit out of the supplier, and the supplier is also going to get the benefit out of the organization, which is obviously going to make the world a better place. So this procurement is something like which occurs at every corner of the globe and every nook and corner of the globe. And here I'm going to cover what is a plan to procure to payment cycle. So this particular diagram, it's like a circle. I would call this as a life circle of procure to pay. If you wonder like where do we start, I'm going to pick this particular top part, which is requisition. Requisition is nothing but it's just it's a demand or something in a specific place where there is a need to purchase something. It could be any service, or it could be any raw material, or it could be any asset or anything which there is a need in a place. So requisition comes into place. Requisition is something it's formally noting down, either in a pen and paper or in a form of a software, stating that we need this particular material for these many quantities for this particular place to this particular person. So there are many things which happens around the requisition. Like in a ERP world, like when a requisition is being entered, it's still not a kind of a document that can be sent to a supplier. Like the requisition is not valid unless until it's properly been converted into something called a purchase order. So purchase order is something which obviously comes as an output of any requisition. Purchase order is something which will be having a brief detail about which product is required and what date and which place to be sent, and what is the price that we are going to pay, and what is the price that supplier is going to get from us, and how soon he can deliver the product to us. So this is the purchase order. Like the purchase order will be kind of a a legal notice, or I would say it's like it's a valid document that supplier need to send the material to the organization or to the individual. Okay, so once the supplier has done his part, then the person who requested the requisition, we would call him as a requisitioner, or the person who is in need of the product. He will do a receipt against the product. There are a few more things which we will discuss. Like supplier will be sending something called advance shipment notice, and the purchase order will be acknowledged by the supplier, and there are some depth things which we will look into the ERP application. As far as the basics go into picture, the next step into the procure to pay is the receiving. The inventory person, if it is a physical item, the inventory person will be receiving it and he will be verifying it. If there are any defect or something, he will reject the material. And if the material is like completely screened, he will be pushing further into his inventory, and he will mark a track of that quantity. And there are not just inventory items which are in place. There are items which will be just a service which might require for a company. So in that place, there won't be any on hand or stock will be involved. It's just going to be a service. And in order to complete the cycle, in order to do the payment to the supplier, we need to have a formal, or a kind of, we would call an expense receipt, which will be made in the system. And then the payment and invoice, the account payable cycle will start from here. The invoice and payment will be starting into picture, and the invoice will be supplier will be sending the invoice, and the same invoice will be matched against the purchase order, and the payment will be made to the supplier as per the agreed payment terms and the payment method which we had with supplier. And then we will pull up a report. Let's say there is a supplier we are having this procure to pay cycle from last 6 months. We can have the performance of the supplier, like how many times he actually delivered the material at the exact time, and what is the quality of the products and goods that he sends, and how serious like he is considering our business. So based on those things, the report can be pulled up, and we can do the supplier performance, and we can have a evaluation of the supplier. And if you are going to have a long-term relationship with the supplier, then we will be creating some agreement with him. Let's say for the next 3 years you are going to supply this with me, and we will ask him the quotation for that, like our service is going to have for at least next 3 years, and what is the best price you can give. And we also parallelly check if there are any best supplier who are available in the market who can give us a best price, or a service, or even a quicker sending of the material. Based on those things, we will requalify the supplier, and this keeps going in our organization, because this cycle is something, technically it has to end somewhere, but in real-time world, this particular requisition to payment, and then requalifying the supplier and having an agreement, and it will keep on going and going. So this is a typical procurement to payment cycle. And I'm going to talk a little bit about supplier management. As we understand, like suppliers are really critical for any business. They are going to be the business partners, and they are going to provide the product and service. Imagine that you are a manufacturing company, and you are doing some production, and every month you will be having some target of producing, like 10 to 50 assemblies or whatever. And let's say the material, you are not manufacturing the material, and you are directly dependent on one of your supplier, and your supplier, your production is directly affected by the way the supplier performs. So the business who don't manufacture the material and who are heavily reliable on supplier, they will be scrutinizing the supplier, and they will be qualifying him. Then only they will be onboarding the supplier. So qualifying a potential supplier suitability as a business partner is key, because they are going to play a vital role in this procurement to pay cycle. And procurement management software streamline the process of assessing critical factors such as financial viability, compliance with the company's code of conduct, and other factors that qualify them as a business partner. So let's say if I'm going to onboard a supplier, or I'm going to have a long-term relationship with the supplier in terms of having purchasing some sort of service or material from him, there are some codes and code of conduct, or there are some ethics which let's say if I am a company, I will be following up. And I would like to, not I would like to, I want my supplier to not to cross that ethical or code of conduct, and he has to be sensitive about the data, and he has to do the complete he should be a responsible business player rather than just a supplier. So for that purpose, like supplier management is an important tool. And after all these things, once the supplier is qualified, the system help manage the ongoing supplier relationship. They can promote the supplier when and there is a need, and we can promote the supplier, and we can extend the service, and we can extend his contract, and we can extend the expiry of a supplier if it is going to expire. The system also notify user when new information becomes available that might adversely affect a supplier qualification capability and change in the risk profile. Supplier is something which in organization in real time, in every organization, not just for ERP, like they will be every year or every 6 months once or every quarterly once, depends on the company's policy. They will be requalifying the supplier. They will be analyzing the risk factor and the risk profile. They will give some rank to the supplier, and if there is a change in the behavior or change in the performance of the supplier, they would reconsider the supplier and they will try to onboard a different supplier. So supplier is a key role, and so this is a typical process which happens in a company. I would call this as a life cycle of a supplier. And the supplier will be registering themselves in a self-service registration, and their profile qualification, credit risk assessment will be happening. And once it is done, the contract will be created against the supplier, and the supplier profile will be registered in the business. And they will always have an ongoing assessment against the supplier to keep on tracking about his performance. And they will update the supplier record as and when necessary, with the output of the assessment. And if in case the supplier is not actually up to the mark, or for some reason he is not doing the same performance, they will deactivate the supplier. Again, they start identifying, searching for, doing a research for another supplier, and they will be identifying a supplier. So this life cycle, if you think about a business or an organization, they might need at least, let's say, some 20-30 different kind of products and services. So not one supplier is going to service everything. There might be different supplier. If you take a specific raw material, there may be 10 to 15 suppliers who are in the market, who are giving the best price and best thing. And who is going to be the best in my point of view? I'm going to talk to them, like I'm going to onboard them, I'm going to have a contract with them. So organization can always qualify and evaluate the supplier periodically, once in a quarter or once in a year or twice in a year, as per their audit and compliance policy. And moving on, supplier qualification management, like I'm going to give a step 1, step 2 till step 6 of how the supplier qualification management is going to happen. So initially they will be getting the requirement about a supplier based on the company standard. They will be some suppliers should be having some ISO certified, and they should be following some carbon emission policy. They should be doing things in an ethical way. They are not violating any government rules in the specific country they are doing their business. After they collect the requirement, the company collected the requirement, they will approach the supplier. They will give some link to register themselves in the in their portal, or they will ask them to send a mail to register themselves in the business. So again, we will gather the information based on the registration we received from the supplier. Our internal audit team, they will be evaluating the response of the supplier. Like let's say if a supplier is actually not let's say we are expecting some standards and some certain range of kind of spend capability, like from a supplier, and we are expecting him at least to have some sort of revenue in a $1 million or $2 million. We might not consider the supplier. We might reject the supplier, and we will be evaluating only the supplier who actually passes the organization need, because like it might create a further a lag in the problem or in the company's production. It will obviously end up in affecting their profit and loss. So they will evaluate the response of the supplier, and they will be creating the supplier, and they will be managing the supplier, and they will start requalifying the supplier when there is a necessary, and based on the end date of the supplier. Moving on to the slide, I'm just going to go into a little deep. The reason I'm going a little bit deep on the supplier project is, in our next session, where I'm going to start with the supplier, because that is the key to a purchase order process. So I just want to have a little bit of introduction, about the supplier. And, again, supplier will be registering themselves. It could be 2 types of registration. Supplier themselves can register, or somebody working in the organization, they will talk to the supplier in a phone, or they will be registering themselves. and it will be approved by the business lead or the business head. The spend manager will be approving, okay, there is a new supplier to give some raw material for us, with a cheap price and with a quicker service, and there are some good reviews about the supplier, and he is going to approve that particular supplier, and they are going to send an invite to supplier, and this is the actual place where he will be registering himself in the portal or in the business, like it could be any ERP portal, or it could be any different tool. They will be registering themselves, and this due diligence will be happening. Supplier information will be always reviewed, and they should have the required bank balance. They should be having the required certificate, and everything will be happening. And then after the due diligence, it will be approved, and they will be activated and deactivated as per the company policy. So this is about the complete supplier thing. Moving on, let's talk about the procure to pay cycle. I'm actually starting the procure to pay cycle now. The first step is called a requisition. So what is a requisition? Requisition is a formal need of a material in a company. There will be a 4-step process in any organization. The purchase request will be entered. It will be entered in a form of a software, or it will be entered in their records, and it will be going to approval for some sort of person, like because it is going to be cost to the company. Like if I'm going to create a purchase requisition and supplier is going to send something, and I'm going to, at the end of the day, I'm going to do some payment to him. So the purchase order will be approved, and it will be reviewed by the appropriate approvers. Like let's say if I am from an IT department and I am creating a requisition for to buy some laptop, or to buy some internet service, or to take some cab service, I'm creating some expense requisition and some inventory related requisition. It will be going to the appropriate approvers. Let's say if I'm creating a requisition related to information technology, it will go to my IT manager for approval. If I'm creating a requisition related to anything related to transportation management to get a contract with the supplier, it will be going to my transportation head for approval. So it depends on different, kind of process. The approval will be triggered or routed to the different person. So it will be approved by the respective manager. If there is any discrepancy with that particular supplier, or the requisition, they are going to reject that particular requisition, and it will be re-entered and will be submitted by the requisitioner. So requisitioner is someone who take care of all the requests for the particular area or the department. For every department, we will have one requisitioner who will be taking care of the requisition on behalf of their employee. And once the requisition is approved, it will be ready to convert into a PO. It will be converted into a PO by the buyer. So moving on to the next process, which is sourcing process. Before requisition and the purchase order, there is something called sourcing. This is where the quotation and the awarding of the quotation will be coming into picture. There is something called request for quotation. It will be created in an organization. The sourcing team will receive the request from the requisition department, and they will be creating a request for quotation. So they will be selecting a couple of vendors or supplier, and they will be asking, hey, I want this particular material, this many quantity, and can you give me the price or the quotation? Can you give me basically the quote for this particular requisition? And they will be adding the questionnaire to the quotation. So they will ask a couple of questions on top of this or a request for quotation, and this particular request for quotation will be sent to the vendors, and they will create an amendment, and they will receive the reply from the supplier. And supplier will be filling the questionnaire, like I'll be providing so and so service for this price, and the scoring will be happen in the procurement department, in the sourcing department. Once the scoring is done, the sourcing department, it's their due diligence to compare. Let's say if they have sent that RFQ, request for quotation, from 10 different suppliers, out of which they have screened 5 suppliers, and now they are in a confusion. They might need only 2 suppliers at the moment, and they have 5 suppliers in hand at the moment. This is when their supplier qualification management will come into picture. There is some process which they will be further drill downing, or drilling the supplier with whatever the best process, and they will be awarding and accepting the reply from the particular vendor. And once this particular request for quotation and to award process is done, it is time for the purchase order. So till the time, there is no cost to the company. So it is just in papers. Let's say if the project has been cancelled and there is no need for requisition, it's not going to cost company any cost, because they haven't started any payment to any person. So this particular request for quotation is kind of one step before the payment process, where actually purchase order is going to create it in the coming steps. So the next step is the typical purchase order process. Purchase order is something, it is the document where we will ask someone, we want this particular material for our company or for our site. So these many quantities are needed. Can you send us the material? So I'm giving this particular document to you. Review this document, acknowledge this document, accept this document, and let me know as soon as you are going to send the material. So this is happening in a real time. If it is not ERP, if it is in paper, they are going to communicate through phone. And if you consider 20-30 years before, where there were no actual software or any kind of ERP, all these things are happening through a pen and paper and with some telephone calls every now and then. Okay, and what happens is a buyer will be coming into picture. Buyer owns the purchase order piece of the procure to pay, and the requisition team process is done. The sourcing team process is done. Now it is buyer's complete responsibility to deal with the particular vendor to get the material delivered to the particular site or particular area with the with the respected time. And what the buyer will do, he will be completing the purchase requisition and he will draft a purchase order. He will not create a purchase order. He will draft a purchase order and he will get a confirmation from the particular vendor. I'm going to process this particular purchase order to you. Would you be in a position to accept and deliver me the material and goods? Based on the response, he will be creating something called purchase order, and he will be actually submitting it. And what happens? Again, this particular purchase order is going to go for an approval based on the department. Like if it is for an IT department, it is going to the IT manager. Same like requisition, the purchase order also will be approved because in a typical procure to pay process, all the document whatever we create is going to come with some approval. Because if you think about in real time, for every process there will be some department manager and senior manager and assistant manager and vice president will be sitting. They have to approve. Let's say if at the end of the year, let's say there is a 1 million of purchase order has been created and spend has been made to the supplier. That particular vice president in the IT department has to answer. He has to give a justification why these many spend has been made. So in order to handle that, the approval process will be happening for the every single document, starting from requisition, sourcing until purchase order. So the purchase order will be then sent to the supplier. He will be receiving it through an email or through an electronic communication, or there are even modern methods has come up with cloud. With cloud you can send the material, or send the purchase order document in a real time through the integration method. It will be sent to the supplier and he will be sending the material, and buyer will receive and he will be asking the requisitioner to confirm. So this closes the purchase order cycle. It started all the way from procurement and it ended up in purchase order. And list of participants in procurement pay. So these are the key players who will be participating in a procure to pay cycle. Requester will be there, supplier will be there, approver will be there, and buyer will be there. There will be a warehouse team. If in case of inventory team, I would say they will be coming into picture if it is any inventory related material. And then account payable will team, because they are the one who are going to do the payment against this particular vendor, and they will be maintaining the account and they will be marking everything in their general ledger. So at the end of the day, they have to post this particular transaction to a ledger where it captures every single thing. Okay, so we have already covered a couple of I talked about requester. He will be handling the purchase requisition. Supplier will be responsible for purchase order mainly. Approver will be there will be approver for requisition, there will be a approver for purchase order, and there will be approver for sourcing and everything. Buyer's role is to deal with the supplier and to get the material delivered on time. Okay, and like inventory person task is just to get the material, and they have to keep the material in appropriate warehouse, or they will have to move the material further into some other places. And then account payable team will take care of the payment, and accounting team will post it to ledger, and they will be maintaining the profit and loss of a company. And moving into the process, there are few difference, like there is something called purchase order, there is something called purchase agreement. We should be knowing the difference between the purchase order and agreement. And in this particular slide, I'm going to talk about purchase order. You generally create a purchase order for a one-time purchase of various items. Let's say, we are not going to have some recurring purchase. There is some meeting is going to happen, and in our organization, so we need some material, like we are going to order some decoration material, or we need some kind of a service from a specific vendor for a week or so, and we will be creating some sort of purchase order to the particular supplier. And you create a purchase order when you know the details of the goods or service that you require, estimated cost, quantity, delivery schedule, and accounting distribution. So purchase order in other terms will be created only if you know what you're going to order, when do you want that, what is the price of the order, like how many quantities you might need, and which location you need. Only if you know all these things, you'll create a purchase order. An order is a formal authorization to purchase good or service. As I mentioned, purchase order is something in formal authorized document. It can be keep for audit purpose, and it can be further used for the audit purpose. Like, I created this particular purchase order document to get this material, so it will be maintained in a company. Your purchasing department create a purchase order which a supplier receives. When I say purchasing department, it is about the buyer. A purchase order can be tracked until you receive the goods or services. This is how it looks in the application. The header and line. I'll be showing these things in the coming slide in the next session, in the practical session, how a purchase order is going to look like. Okay, moving into the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular blanket purchase agreement, which is an agreement. What is an agreement? So, agreement is basically, let's say we might need a material or some service from someone for the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, and for this matter, company will not be creating a purchase order. Instead, they want to have an agreement with the particular vendor. We are going to create agreement with you. When we say blanket, the price is going to be the blanket, because they will not decide the price of the item, but they will decide few things which is mentioned here. You create a blanket purchase agreement when you know the detail of the goods or services you plan to buy from a specific supplier. Let's say I know I'm going to purchase some laptops and furniture from a particular supplier. One is from a Dell supplier and one is from a specific furniture supplier. I'm going to purchase few items that I'm very sure about, but we don't know when exactly we need. I might be needing the product maybe in a week. I might be needing in a product maybe after a month, or I might be needing the product in 6 months, or maybe after 6 months, or whenever a possible time. What we will do during this time is we will create a blanket purchase agreement with our supplier. I might need this product for I might purchase this from starting from today, which is the 7th of Jan to next year 7th of Jan. In this 1 year meantime, I will purchase anytime. Okay. Price for an item can be negotiated on a blanket purchase agreement by a procurement business unit, which can be made available to multiple requesting units. There may be some technical terms called procurement and requesting business unit. We will be covering the practical part. This particular piece of the slide is talking about when we are sure about the price. Let's say the laptop is going to cost me $100. No matter if I order today or if I order 6 months or if I am going to order after a year. So we will be having some pre-negotiated price with the supplier. Like, it can be negotiated during the time of release. Like, it is not necessarily I will be always buying for $100. Maybe, when I order it after 6 months, the price might come down. So I will be ordering it for $80 or $70. So blanket purchase agreement are created for this particular matter. And there is something called contract purchase agreement. So this is a simple agreement. You create a contract purchase agreement with your supplier to agree on specific terms and conditions without indicating the goods or services that you will be purchasing. Meaning, let's say, we do not even know the material. Like, I might need 10 item or 20 item or 10 different services from a specific supplier. I know only the supplier, and I know only the time, maybe between 2 years I'll be purchasing. So in this time, you create something called contract purchase agreement. It is just a contract and nothing else. You don't know the item, you don't know the price and you don't know the delivery schedule and nothing. And later we can issue a purchase order referencing the contract using some terms negotiated on a contract purchase agreement. I will be having certain terms and conditions with my supplier. For example, I'm going to have specific terms like I will pay you within 30 days or I'll pay you within 60 days of your delivery. These kind of terms and conditions we will be finalizing with the supplier, and based on that particular terms and condition, we will be releasing the requisition whenever there is a need in the organization. So this is the difference between a contract and a blanket purchase agreement. And this particular diagram is going to cover everything whatever we discussed. Purchase requisition to purchase order process. The purchase request will be created, it will be approved. If not approved, it will be sent back to the requisitioner, and they will be resubmitting this, and again it will be approved. And what happens is, we will ask the supplier for request of information or the request for the proof or the e-sourcing document. Basically, the supplier will be sending the proof to us. Based on that, we will be creating a purchase order. So the purchase order will be then sent to a supplier. This particular piece, whatever you see here, is the supplier. He will be sending the material to us back, and what happens is then the supplier will be sending an invoice because it's time for them to receive the money. In order to receive the money, like invoice is a legal way to get the payment from someone, so they will be sending an invoice. So that particular invoice, the AP team, account payable team, they will be matching these two things. One is the purchase order and another one is the invoice. They will be matching these two things, and based on the kind of matching they have set in the company, they will be having some invoice approval also. As I mentioned, the procure to pay is totally streamlined, and it is tightly controlled. It is totally secured, and every document has their own approval mechanism. Requisition will have their own approval mechanism. RFQ will be having their approval mechanism. Purchase order will be having their approval mechanism, and invoice also will be having their approval mechanism. Once this particular invoicing is done, there will be some payment method. I will be paying within 3 months, 30 days or 60 days, and I will be paying you through wire method, or I will be paying you through PayPal account. Depends on the account which we define in the supplier. The particular payment will be sent to the supplier from ERP. So this completes one life cycle of procure to pay. This process will be keep going on and on and on. And let's say if there is some lag with the supplier is not behaving lately, his performance is really drastically decreasing, then the AP team and the procurement team will be in a lookout for a different supplier. And this process again goes with a different supplier. And like this, there may be multiple departments involving in an organization. Let's say your client is a manufacturing client. There may be some automobiles getting manufactured. There may be some different kind of material getting manufactured. There may be some food item getting manufactured. So there will be a different supplier will be playing a different role for the different department. So they will be keeping track of the supplier performance and about the supplier in every single thing. Okay, and what are the major challenges in a traditional P2P process? Slow invoice processing time. There are many times a supplier complains, in an organization, or the organization complains the supplier. There are many manual process involving. The invoice process takes time. It's time for us to. It's really getting late for us to receive the purchase order, and manual routing is involved. Processing and sign-off procedures are slowing down the P2P cycle, and to capture the early payment discount, it lead to late payment penalties and can have a worst supplier relationship. So they have a challenge in terms of invoicing. Okay, and there are also reduced accuracy when you are doing this process through a traditional process. Let's say with the outdated thing, or in a manual process, there is a lot of risk of errors. Let's say you instead of $1,000, you might have paid a supplier to $1,200. It is really going to adversely affect your company. The company's profit is going to go down if you are keep on doing this. So in order to avoid the error, like ERP can be leveraged, and risk of error inherent in any process involving paper and manual data entry. This is of impact on working capital and the fact that transactions are subject to audit and regulatory complaints. Okay, and higher cost per invoice. let's say you are doing it manually, the processing error it will happen, and it is going to cost a little bit of extra dollar or extra rupees for every single invoice, which is obviously going to affect the companies, in companies the financial growth, and it's really going to have issue with their in their warehouse, and it really going to have a poor performance in their coming cycle. Okay, lack of visibility is obviously one important thing. You are not going to have a streamlined process, because let's say I'm a manager, I'm an IT manager, or I'm an audit manager. I want to know what is the current status of the material that are I'm waiting for a specific project. Okay, I have to follow up so many person. I have to call the requester, I have to call the sourcing team, I have to follow up with the buyer, or in fact I have to call the AP team. There is a lack of visibility basically. If it is streamlined, or if it is really put into place into a software, then I can simply log into a system. I just need to have my user access. I'll be pulling up a report and see, and okay, this particular item will be delivered to me in next 3 or 4 days, and my project is going to start within a week, and it is going to good for me. And let's say if the material will take 2 weeks to deliver, then I at least get to know. I will follow up with the supplier, and I will communicate to my supplier, and I will explain him the importance of the delivery, and the tight deadlines we have, and I will ask him to deliver as soon as possible. So with the visibility, we can have a free of mind, and we can have the ability to run our business without any hassle in the mind. Okay, it's going to be hassle free, in other terms. And difficult data retrieval, it is going to be the same thing. From audit to vendor inquiries, finding information quickly can be virtually in invoice, and POs are stored and returned manually. There is a difference between pulling up a data from your manual thing versus pulling a data from in a informative report. So there is always going to be a difference. In this way, by using any software, we can avoid this particular the traditional challenges that are generally being faced in a procure-to-pay cycle. Okay, and I talked about this a little bit in my previous cycle, in my previous session, in the day one, the second session. When we implement this particular procure-to-pay, and what is going to happen, like it is going to improve the efficiency. It really going to improve the project, because when you get the material on time, your project is going to perform well. And better business automation, like your business might be knowing what is going to happen, and he will take an informative decision, and it is going to improve the workflow, and it's going to improve the productivity. And transparency is something which is obviously going to happen. Redundancies can be eliminated, meaning you can simply copy a document. Let's say if there are purchase order there, and you are going to create a purchase order for the next 10 months or so, you can simply copy a document, or you can automate the process so that it's going to be an automated process rather than keep on entering the same thing again and again. So the report is obviously going to have kind of a important effect. In my day 5, when I walk through with Oracle, I will be covering a little bit on the reporting aspect as well, because we are just focusing on the cycle with ERP, but I will take a chance and the time to do about the reporting also. We can easily access the data. The data accessibility is fine, and the data security is always on top, and it's always going to be a positive response, and adaptable and customization is also possible with ERP. So ERP is going to help the business. It could be any ERP, and we are going to have the same thing in our demo session, which is planned in the next 10 minutes or so. I'll be taking the questions and answers from there on. The next session is going to cover the ERP, the demo part of the procure-to-pay cycle. Over to you, Pramodji. I have completed, might be, I have finished a little bit 3 or 4 minutes early, but we would use this time to spend more time on the application, which is really going to, help people with visually understand the process more.
Thank you, Mr. Partha. Let's see the questions.
Sure.
Your questions, please put in the chat box. before we start the hands-on session, let's see if there are questions. Please post in the chat box. Everyone is requested. I have not seen any questions so far. Is the JIT technique come under procurement? That's one question I can see. Parthiji,
Can you
please?
repeat that, Pramodji?
Yeah. Is the just-in-time technique come under procurement? That's the question asked by Mr. Venugopal. Can you
Yeah,
please?
not exactly the just in time, but we have a real time thing happening in procurement, but this just in time is actually not in the current scope. Like,
Any further questions from the participants? At least those who are available. We encourage you to ask question. Okay. Okay. I think they may have more questions when you demonstrate. So,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, so let us have a little 2-3 minutes of break and continue with the second session. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Parthaji, and Venkat sir and others, the participants available at this point in time. One more quick question, Mr. Nagaraju RC. How can JIT in PPP? The question is not clear, sir. Can you please expand at least?
Yeah, there are a
How
lot
can
of
they be
acronyms.
in PPP? Yeah. So it's not clear. Helpful. Okay. How can JIT in PPP be helpful? That's the question, I think. How can be JIT in PPP helpful? Public
Yeah,
partnership,
like
private
it's going
partnership. Yeah.
to, yeah. So just in time again. I think what Nagaraj is trying to ask is how can just in time in plan to procure to pay, and it's obviously going to get delivered just in time. Like it is going to meet the customer or the organization requirement in a bit faster way. It's going to have less inventory, and it is going to have avoiding them a lot of cost effective to the company. We don't have the exact real time thing, like if the order is placed and it's going to come in as soon as possible, but with the help of the further technologies, like the advanced like artificial intelligence and the internet of things, it is going to come just in time. In the Oracles keep on upgrading, or ERPs keep on getting upgraded, maybe in the coming time it's going to have a lot of additional things.
Okay. I think one more last question for you, Parthaji. How can JIT approach be helpful in production planning and control?
Yeah, it will help the organization to take some information. It will stop, or it will avoid basically the dependencies, and it is really going to take care of their inventory, and it's going to take care of their costing part as well, and they can take more information with just in time. But at least I haven't seen this just in time technology with respective to ERP that much. Maybe the company or the softwares are going to get that adapted very soon, but yeah, it is definitely going to increase the profit of the company, or it is going to help them in all possible ways.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you all the participants in this session. So we are going to end this broadcast, and after 2 minutes, we'll again start the second session. Please stay tuned for an effective demonstration by Mr. Partha. So thank you very much, everyone. Let us end the session now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.